Well, Monday marked the start of National Reconciliation Week, and two things struck me. First, there's been surprisingly little about it in the media. Aside from a few tweets, I've heard nothing about it from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and that strikes me as strange when you remember he spent the first year of his term in office talking about little else. The second thing that strikes me as odd is that this, I believe, is the 28th year in a row that National Reconciliation Week has been held, and yet Australia seems more divided by race now than ever before. Even the National Reconciliation website, rather than bring Australians together, seems to me intent on pitting people against one another, casting some Australians as good and others as not. Have a look at this. The website says, now more than ever, we need to tackle the unfinished business of reconciliation. We know that the 6.2 million Australians who voted yes are committed to better outcomes for First Nations people and are with us. I read that and thought, hang on a second. The organisers of Reconciliation Week seem to be suggesting that the 60% of Australians who voted no at the referendum are not committed to better outcomes for Aboriginal people. Really? Joining me is Shadow Indigenous Affairs Minister, I should say, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price. Senator, do you agree with the inference from the Reconciliation organisation?
I actually find it quite disappointing because it is not, it is not about the spirit of reconciliation within that statement itself. And it's certainly not true to suggest that those who voted no to the voice don't want what's best for Indigenous Australians. In fact, the very opposite is absolutely my understanding for the many, many Australians that I had the opportunity to meet right around the country, including Indigenous Australians who voted no to the concept of the voice. That's what they voted no to: division, racial division within our constitution, and leaving the lives of our most vulnerable in the hands of an unknown entity.
So, riddle me this, how do comments like that from Reconciliation Australia help reconciliation?
Well, they don't, quite simply put. They absolutely don't. And evidently they don't have, I believe, the best intentions for our most marginalised at the forefront as a priority. What really gets to me, James, is that I grew up in a culture where it was about accepting all people, black, white, brindle. My elders believed that if you were conceived on this country, your baby spirit came from the land. You belong to this country just like everybody else, and that is what true reconciliation is about. It's accepting everybody as human, it's coming to the table, and everyone putting something on the table to support one another.
Yeah, well said. It does seem to me like the referendum did drive Australians apart rather than bring Australians together. It also seems to me like the government is clueless as to what to do about it now. Do you get that impression?
Look, the government had no backup plan whatsoever. They absolutely thought they had the voice in the bag, and evidently they're quiet on a many number of issues, which concerns me because, it almost feels like, well, are they in the background trying to get things done deceitfully in a sneaky manner? But I'm also aware of many very good programs that are delivering outcomes right across the country that are having their funding cut as we speak. So it is concerning that this government, their track record is abysmal across the board, and particularly when it comes to improving the lives of marginalised Indigenous Australians.
Help me understand the whole concept of reconciliation. Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney put out a statement for Reconciliation Week saying, quote, now more than ever it's time to make progress towards reconciliation. And the Assistant Indigenous Affairs Minister, she said something similar. She said, reconciliation is a journey for all Australians to embark on. So, Senator, when I hear those words, I sort of think, well, OK, but that kind of begs the question, and I think possibly for most Australians, if we're going on a journey towards reconciliation, how do we know when we've gotten to the destination and who decides?
Well, I think that given it's, there's a copious amounts of funding available for forever attempting to reach this concept of reconciliation, I don't think we'll ever actually get there. Ultimately, you can't expect one group of Australians based on racial heritage to be elevated by expecting the rest of Australia to take responsibility for that. And I think that's where a lot of the reason why we can't seem to get to the next point. And perhaps, as I've mentioned many times, the element of forgiveness is the element that is missing, that ultimately, that I see, is required for this concept of reconciliation. But there has to be open hearts and open minds for that to occur, and everybody accepting responsibility for circumstances.
You've probably anticipated my next question slightly, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Let's imagine that you are not only the Indigenous Affairs Minister, but you're also the Prime Minister. It's your first Reconciliation Week in charge of the country. What would your message be?
My message would be everyone has a seat at the table. We are all responsible for ourselves, for our actions. We hold the key to our own destiny, and we've got to move away from the victim mentality if we're supposed to progress forward. And true reconciliation is acceptance of everybody and not excluding anybody, and that we're all there for wanting what's best for all Australians, but particularly our most marginalised.
Senator Price, it's always an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your time tonight.